I never thought I'd be writing about the end of my marriage at 31, but here I am. After 4 years of what I believed was a perfect marriage with Ryan, everything came crashing down in a single afternoon. We'd been together for 6 years before getting married. Our story was simple. We met through mutual friends at a local festival, dated for 2 years, and then tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by our families. Life was good. We both had stable jobs, went on regular date nights, and even started planning to buy our dream house in the suburbs. Ryan worked as a financial advisor while I managed our home after leaving my job in marketing. It was a mutual decision. I wasn't particularly passionate about my career, and we both liked the idea of having someone take care of our home full-time. Plus, we'd been talking about starting a family soon. The day everything changed started normally enough. My laptop was acting up, so I grabbed Ryan's phone to book tickets for an upcoming music festival while he was in the shower. It wasn't something I thought twice about. We'd always been open with our devices, never having anything to hide from each other. Or so I thought. As I was checking for the booking confirmation, a message notification popped up from someone named Andrea. I probably wouldn't have clicked on it if the preview hadn't contained the words, "Miss you." What I found made my stomach drop: weeks of messages between Ryan and his colleague, filled with things that no married man should be saying to another woman. They talked about their deep connection, how they felt like twin flames, and how they wished they could spend more time together. The worst part? Some of the sweet nothings he sent her were exact copies of what he'd say to me. Word for word. The same phrases about being soulmates, about never feeling this way before, all lies apparently. When Ryan came out of the shower and found me sitting there with his phone, tears streaming down my face, his reaction told me everything I needed to know. Instead of showing concern or asking what was wrong, his first move was to snatch the phone away. He immediately went on the defensive, claiming I had no right to go through his messages. "It's not what you think," he said, using perhaps the most cliché line in the history of caught cheaters. "Andrea's just a friend. We're just close colleagues. She's married too, you know." When I pointed out that just friends don't typically profess their love for each other or talk about wanting to be together, he tried to minimize it. "We haven't done anything physical," he insisted, as if that made it better. "It's just words, just a bit of harmless flirting. You're making this into something it's not." What hurt more than the messages themselves was how he tried to turn it around on me. According to him, I was overreacting and making a mountain out of a molehill. He even had the audacity to suggest that if I hadn't snooped through his phone, we wouldn't be having this problem. As if my discovery of his betrayal was the real issue, not the betrayal itself. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. I packed a bag and drove to my parents' place, my mind replaying all the recent moments that now felt tainted. The romantic dinner we'd had just last week, where he'd held my hand across the table and told me I was the only one for him. Had he texted her right after? The weekend trip we'd taken to the coast. Had he been thinking of her the whole time? When I told my parents what happened, they were shocked but supportive. My mom immediately cleared out their guest room, and my dad offered to go talk some sense into Ryan, which I declined. Their reaction helped validate my feelings. I wasn't crazy for being upset about this. Emotional affairs are still affairs. But Ryan wasn't done. He started bombarding me with messages, alternating between defending his actions and accusing me of overreacting. When I didn't respond, he switched to threats. "If you try to divorce me," he texted, "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. You'll have nothing left." That's when I decided to take action. I knew there was one person Ryan actually feared, his mother, Patricia. While we weren't particularly close, I had her number, and I knew she needed to know what kind of man her son had become. I forwarded her the screenshots of Ryan's messages with Andrea and called to explain everything. The emotional affair, his gaslighting, and now his threats. What I didn't know then was that I'd just opened a door to a family history I'd never been told about, and my simple act of revenge would have consequences far beyond what I'd imagined. The next morning my phone rang. It was Ryan, and he was crying harder than I'd ever heard him cry before. "Please," he begged, "call my mom and tell her you made it all up. Tell her you were angry and exaggerated everything." Apparently, Patricia had called her lawyer and removed Ryan from her will. He'd lost his entire inheritance, except for a small vacation property in Mexico that his father had left him years ago. Despite everything Ryan had done to me, I felt a twinge of guilt. This seemed like an extreme reaction, even for someone as stern as Patricia. That's when my Aunt Jane, who'd known Patricia's social circle for years, filled me in on the real story. Ryan's perfect family wasn't so perfect after all. His parents had separated when he was young, not because they grew apart as he'd always claimed, but because his father had cheated on Patricia. Patricia had caught her husband having an affair with his secretary, the most cliché scenario imaginable. Instead of divorcing him and risking a messy custody battle, she'd simply moved out and built her own life. She turned her small cosmetics business into a major company, while his dad became the fun weekend parent who spoiled Ryan with gifts and trips. Ryan had known all this. He'd known exactly how infidelity had torn his family apart, yet he'd followed in his father's footsteps anyway. No wonder Patricia had reacted so strongly. She was watching history repeat itself. When Ryan called again, still crying about his lost inheritance, I felt my guilt evaporate. "You did this to yourself," I told him. "Your threats and manipulation aren't going to work anymore." Then I hung up and blocked his number. I started looking for jobs again. My old marketing skills were rusty, but I managed to land an interview with a decent firm. The morning of the interview, I put on my best suit, practiced my answers one last time, and headed out. The interview went well, so well that I actually felt optimistic for the first time in weeks. That optimism lasted until I walked to my car in the parking lot. I felt someone grab me from behind, but my old self-defense training kicked in. I spun around to find Ryan, looking wild-eyed and desperate. I managed to shove him away and jump into my car, locking the doors just as he started banging on the windows. I reversed quickly, not caring if I hit him. He stumbled back, and I heard a thud as he fell. I drove a few blocks away and called the police, then returned to find Ryan still there, clutching his leg and cursing at me. The police arrived quickly and arrested him, even as he shouted that I'd ruined his life. The whole incident left me shaking. This wasn't the man I'd married. The Ryan I knew would never have tried to physically intimidate me. Or maybe he would have. Maybe I'd never really known him at all. I filed for a restraining order that same day. My lawyer assured me this incident would help our divorce case, but that was small comfort. I couldn't sleep properly for days, jumping at every sound. My parents installed extra security cameras around their house, and my dad started insisting on driving me to and from my interviews. Through all this, I kept reminding myself that none of it was my fault. Ryan had made his choices to cheat, to lie, to threaten, and finally to attack. Each step of the way, he'd had the option to do the right thing, and each time he'd chosen wrong. Still, it was hard not to feel responsible somehow. If I hadn't looked at his phone that day. But no. If I hadn't discovered the truth then, who knows how long his deception would have continued. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I could have handled things differently. Maybe I shouldn't have told Patricia. Maybe I should have tried harder to work things out. But then I remember how easily the lies had rolled off his tongue, how quickly he'd turned to threats when he couldn't control me anymore. No, I'd done the right thing. The consequences Ryan was facing, losing his inheritance, facing criminal charges, those were all results of his own actions. The divorce proceedings moved quickly after the parking lot incident. With evidence of both emotional infidelity and physical intimidation, Ryan didn't have much of a leg to stand on. He got off lightly for the attack, just a misdemeanor since it was his first offense and I hadn't been physically hurt. I'd hoped for a stronger punishment, but at least the restraining order meant he had to keep his distance. Our last court appearance was a circus. Ryan spent the whole time throwing verbal jabs at me, calling me every name in the book. I just sat there, staring straight ahead. His words couldn't hurt me anymore. I'd already mourned the man I thought I'd married. A week after the divorce was finalized, Patricia reached out and asked to meet for coffee. I agreed, curious about what Ryan's mother wanted to discuss. We met at a quiet cafe near my parents' house, and she surprised me with an unexpected offer. "I want you to have Ryan's inheritance," she said simply, stirring her coffee. "You deserve it more than he does." I was touched but declined immediately. The alimony and settlement from Ryan were enough. I didn't need or want his family's money. Instead, I suggested she donate it to charity. Patricia smiled and said she'd already been considering that option. Over coffee, she thanked me for having the courage to expose Ryan's behavior. Not many daughters-in-law would have done that, she said. Most would have suffered in silence. She gave me her number and told me to call if I ever needed anything. It was nice to know that even though my marriage had ended, I'd gained an unexpected ally. It's been 3 months since I first discovered those messages on Ryan's phone. I've been working at my new job for 6 weeks now, and it's going better than I expected. Marketing has changed a lot in 2 years, but I'm catching up quickly. My coworkers are friendly, and the work keeps my mind off everything that happened. My parents want me to keep living with them, but I've started looking for my own place. I need to stand on my own feet again. Plus, I think it'll help me fully process this new chapter of my life. Being divorced at 31 wasn't part of my plan, but then again, neither was marrying someone capable of such betrayal. Through mutual friends, I heard that Ryan tried to officially start dating Andrea after our divorce, but she chose to stay with her husband instead. Apparently, their soulmate connection wasn't strong enough to risk her own marriage and stability. I wasn't surprised. Their relationship had been built on lies and fantasy from the start. The hardest part now is trusting my own judgment again. I spent 4 years believing I was in a perfect marriage, never suspecting what was happening behind my back. Ryan had seemed so genuine, so loving. How did I miss the signs? But my therapist keeps reminding me that his ability to deceive isn't a reflection of my ability to trust. The fault lies with him, not me. These days, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I've started taking evening classes in digital marketing to update my skills. I joined a local hiking group to meet new people. Small steps, but they're all moving me forward. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about the future I thought I'd have. The house in the suburbs, the family we'd planned. But those dreams belong to a different life, with a man who never really existed. The woman who discovered those messages 3 months ago wouldn't believe how much stronger I am now. I've learned that sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. I don't know what's next for me, but for the first time in months, I'm actually excited to find out. I still have moments of anger when I think about everything Ryan did, but mostly I feel relief. Relief that I discovered the truth before we had children. Relief that I didn't waste more years with someone who could so easily betray my trust. And relief that I found the strength to stand up for myself when it mattered most. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that we can't control what others do to us, but we can control how we respond. I chose not to be a victim of Ryan's betrayal. Instead, I chose to be a survivor, and that has made all the difference.